We have our breeding, our collection and logistics centre at Bellevue, which is between Cambridge and Hamilton, and also our Peninsula Farm, which is our isolation facility where our young bulls grow, and that's near Raglan. So it's a fairly extensive network of parts of the business, but that's what's needed to make sure that we can deliver that high quality product to people.
So a bit about the past. As James has said, we've been around for 50 years. It started in '69 with a small group of like-minded farmers, and in that period we've had quite a number of industry firsts and achievements. The AB technician training schools, they're very important still to make sure that we have AB technicians for our service program, but also we have a lot of farmers that train DIY, and that's having skilled resources there is that's a challenge. We were the first to bring a crossbred sire to the market, Amadeus, in 2000, and we really instigated that segment of the market, and that's grown to now nearly 50% of the cows in New Zealand are crossbred cows, a mixture of Jersey and Holstein, and the crossbred use of sires is up to about 30% of the total market. So that's a significant segment now. The herd testing service that started in 2002. James referred to Ambreeds selling to CRV. In 2005, we started our own index, the New Zealand Merit Index. For us, we felt there was something missing in the offering, and also in combination with our herd testing service, we needed to provide our customers with information, index information on their cows, and that index is, when we look at where the national breeding objective, the BW, is going, that index is already there. So that's been a very good future-proof index. Genomics. That's really important part of the future and the present, but also certainly of the future. Genomics will allow us to increase the genetic gain, but also to at an earlier age predict the quality of females. And James referred to being able to keep less replacements, and that might help, but also with environmental challenges. Well, if we select the best replacements at an earlier age, again, that might help with that process. So that's where genomics is really important, and that's been a big part of our investment in R&D and innovation. Other innovative tools, facial eczema, very important for the North Island. We've been the first ones to have a facial eczema tolerant team, and research in that area is ongoing. In the sheep industry, that's been a big success, and they are a bit further than what we are. But that's an area also where R&D can be challenging. And we have a product, but getting the information from animals on the ground is challenging, and you need various parties to cooperate to make that happen. So the data flow to make that better and improve that's really challenging. Poults, homozygous poult bulls were introduced in 2017, and there's certainly a lot of interest for that product, and that helps with the welfare side of the animals, and there's an increased focus in our breeding program for that. And then environmentally sustainable products, the low-end product that we launched in 2018. That's another key. That's on the efficiency and the environmental side. And then sex semen sorting technology. We invested in that through a company called Engender, and that's ongoing development. And that sex semen product, the interest for that is growing. It's doubled again this year in uptake. So that's really a growing part of the industry. The essence of herd improvements. This also gives you an indication of, okay, what is the herd improvement industry about? When it comes to breeding, farmers are using genetics to get their cows in calf, and they need to produce a calf every year to keep that milk production up. Production efficiency has been a key, and it's about efficiently converting grass to solids, to quality fat and protein. That efficiency driver has helped to already create environmental gains. When you look at the efficiency of the genetics, the cow population we have now compared to 20 years ago, it's much more efficient, and that's one area that we will continue to keep looking at, and that's where methane and research, but also feed efficiency research comes in. More calves are born than are required as replacements, so that's a challenge for the industry, and we need to deal with that. All calves need to have a purpose is another one, and then the AB artificial breeding. It's a more efficient way of producing the next generation, but also creating more genetic gain. But there's also a biosecurity aspect, and doing it with through AB is safer than with live bulls. Herd solutions, farmers need data to make better decisions. That has been so in the past, but that is certainly for the future even more important. And then the ways data are collected through milk tankers, reports, through herd testing, recording of health events by vets, by farmers, DNA results that come through, mating data and fertility results. And that's where also there is new developments when it comes to companies like Halter and other companies that are offering different ways of collecting data. So that's where there's potential. James.
Yeah, no, someone has to do it every call, don't they? Anyway, so I think if we look at it, one of the best examples, I guess, of the opportunity for genetics is we've recently seen the publication of information around the Fonterra difference, and I think they are a good example of how industry has recognised the importance of the role of genetics can play in creating a long-term solution. And the beauty of this is that with a genetic solution is that you actually embed the change, and then any development upon that is incremental. So in some ways, it's very much like compound interest. And there's a number of things that we can actually do with genetics that will provide us, I think, in some long-term solutions with some of the challenges we're seeing. We've got issues around, or challenges around changes in the freshwater targets, emissions pricing, concerns around animal welfare, commitments to international protocols are driving a lot of this change. So we're going to continue to see those things go on, and one of the things that we can look at is what is the role of genetics in that. So if we look through some of those things, as Peter's talked about, the investments in methane and nitrogen runoff, animal welfare in relation to polled, using genetics for polled animals born without horns, and also the use of sex semen to effectively potentially create another income stream for farmers if they wanted to create heifers and then actually use surplus cows to mate to dairy beef. So a number of options that can be built upon, and I think we're starting to see how those things can be aligned. So that's a very a great place for us to be in as a business, and I think increasingly with CRV's focus as it's been on health and efficiency, the market is actually coming towards, I guess, some of those things that we've been breeding for, and recognizing that breeding genetics is a long-term game as well. We need to be trying to look at trends and understand what's happening probably 5 years out, because the animals that are bred today and they're actually going to be born this spring won't actually be in the herd for another couple of years yet. So decisions that we make today are important for future generations. So I guess with that, I guess, for us, what is the innovation will continue to drive some of those solutions. And if we look at where our business is heading in relation to that, is the development and release of our herd recording platform is very much around allowing farmers to understand and capture that data. What's different, I guess, from our point of view is that we have a view that the data belongs to farmers, and our view is that we want to provide a place where that data can be held and others can feed in and feed out of it very easily. So the MyHerd product will integrate with other providers of information to allow that data to flow freely into and out of it, which is quite a different approach than perhaps others in the marketplace at the moment. You would have seen in the last couple of weeks information come out around a project that we're jointly funding with LIC and ourselves to actually look at identifying bulls that produce less methane. Again, that's an area around how do we get efficiency into the dairy industry. So there's a number of things that are going on, and some of these issues I think we need to be clear are bigger than the companies themselves. These are larger ones, and on those sorts of larger projects, we've got a great track record in collaborating and doing things together. So we've done work with the low end sires with Embryo and Dairy NZ, and we continue to work and look at opportunities where we can leverage off investments that have been made both in New Zealand, but also looking at research that CRV might have been involved with internationally, and looking at the relevance of that and how that can be rolled out potentially to improve the well-being of New Zealand farmers as well. As I talked about, we're going to continue to look at integrating our herd recording platform with some of the quality assurance programs that are in place, the likes of the Farm with Pride program with Synlait. The MyHerd product was built by FarmIQ, and that you may be aware that FarmIQ and Synlait have a close relationship with their Dairy Enterprise program. So again, making sure that what we do is not duplicating on farm, making it as efficient as we can do. Again, if we work through the importance of understanding the female makeup within herds is going to become more critical, and we'll talk a little bit about our term precision mating shortly, but part of that is actually having a commercial testing service for DNA, so farmers can understand the genetic makeup of their female population in their herds to ensure that they actually mate the right cows to the right bulls to get the right outcome. Increasingly, we'll continue to work on the methane piece. Heat tolerance is another area which will become of interest to us. And again, throughout this healthier cows piece becomes very important. If we can get, as we've mentioned earlier, another lactation out of cows, that actually has huge impacts on the number of replacements that need to be carried through the industry. So longevity becomes quite important. And throughout all of this, we do see that the production of milk protein and the healthy aspects of that are very, very important. You'll be aware that the likes of Fonterra have their grass-fed brand in the marketplace now, which is more around healthy and efficient food production. And we want to make sure that we provide products to the New Zealand dairy industry that align very well with that whole New Zealand Inc. approach of being a healthy, safe place to produce food.
So continuing on from that, we need to breed a cow that fits the future, and some of the future is clear. Other parts are not very set in stone. So that's where we have to predict the future. But it's about producing cows that produce more milk with less feed. It's feed efficiency. It's about cows that last longer, and that's about longevity. And we have good for longevity. We have good tools that allow us to measure it. But for feed efficiency, for instance, it's quite challenging to measure feed efficiency on animals that are roaming freely outside on pasture. Our colleagues in Holland, they are measuring feed efficiency, feed intake on animals that are partly barn fed, and in that situation you can do it. In our environment, in our systems, that's a big challenge, and that's where we need technology to help us to create that opportunity. And again, that's where we as a genetics company need to cooperate with other parties that can develop that technology. And if we can work together and implement that, we will be able to also get feed efficiency data on our genetics to further drive that efficiency part. Fertility, that's extremely important. That's where we work with NZAL and Dairy NZ on improving the models, improving the quality of the data to give better information. If the cows don't get in calf, we have wastage, but also then they don't last. So that's important. Less mastitis, other health. Antibiotics are one of the tools to help with that now, to manage that. But again, that's where also there is a lot of pressure from the Fonterra's and other companies for farmers to use less antibiotics, and that's the health aspect that comes back. James mentioned the Embryo trial, the work we've done around low N. That will continue. Nitrogen and methane are two key areas where we don't have all the answers now, but and through our focus on more efficient genetics, we have helped. We have created an industry or environments that farming systems that have less impact on the environment than they did 20 years ago. But the challenges that are ahead of us mean that we need to go faster, and that's what the Embryo trial, what low N and methane are all about. If we keep doing what we've done in the past, we're not going fast enough, and this research will help us to find different ways to speed up the process and the genetic gain, and create genetics that will allow us to have less cows, but also the cows that we have will have a lower impact on the environment. And then, yeah, the heat tolerance, the last one. That's where we have some ideas on how we can improve that. But there's also ideas there that could be challenging on how we do that, because we can use extra data to come up with differences in genetic ability, but there's also ways that we might be able to different techniques that we can use that will speed up that process, and that's where gene editing comes in potentially. But that's an area that's also when it comes to being able to use that technique and the technology, there's lots of debate around that, and we're well aware of that. But we continue to look at ways that we might be able to incorporate that in the future. So this is all about creating genetics that are better, are more efficient, are healthier, and meet these targets. And that's the long-term nature of genetics, means that this will take time. But there is other areas that we can apply that actually short-term we can do things. And that's go back to James.
I guess the concept we talk about within CRV is what we call precision mating. So, and again, down the right hand side of the slide here, it all starts off with good understanding, good information. To understand, if you want to take a herd or improve it, we need to understand where it's at, and just, I guess, taking industry averages and trusting the industry to take us in the right direction. As I think our real driver here is to get better cows faster, for the want of a soundbite. But it is about actually how do we get that genetic gain on farm as fast as we possibly can. And so it is actually understanding on a farm by farm basis, what is the herd performance, what are the gaps, what are the things that we can actually improve with genetics to move the herd in the right direction. So things like, have we got good herd test records, have we got good data records around what the farm's doing, using my herd to collect that, have we got, by using my DNA to actually collect the genetic samples. And I see one of the questions is, what is the uptake of genetic DNA testing? Again, it's very much like we're seeing growth in that, very similar to what we see in sex semen. There's a huge demand. I think as farmers are beginning to realise the wealth of information that it can provide, not just in respect to parentage, but in respect to the genetic merit of those animals, and also what gaps they need to be breeding to make, what gaps they need to be looking to fill through breeding. Then once you've got that information, you can understand at a farmer level, what are the genetics inside your herd you want to harvest and keep within your business, and be quite selective around that by using sex semen. And again, using sex semen from bulls that are the best genetics you can, rather than those that may just be available. Because those genetics you purchase through sex semen are the ones that are going to stay on your herd for a long period of time. So it's important that that some thought is given into recognising what they want to carry through. And again, using systems like sire match, the right bulls to the right cows to avoid inbreeding is very important, because a collection of all those things, the genetics and the information, will allow us to get better cows faster for farmers, and that's where we'll get that step change of improvement, whether it be around animal welfare outcomes with pole genetics, or facial eczema resistant genetics, or whether it's around using sex semen to drive another income stream potentially for the industry. So again, the more information we have, the better those decisions can be. And increasingly, as we move into the future, it's going to be around the deployment of those genetics, which is going to be as important as, or not as, will be as important as the genetics themselves, making sure we're putting it in the right place to get the right outcome as fast as we possibly can. That's sort of on the commercial side, and I guess Peter's just going to talk a little bit about some technology which we're using in our breeding side that allows us to, I guess, to coin that phrase, to get better bulls faster.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the embryo work and then biopsy. So as part of our strategy, we also have a major investment in a company called ABS, Animal Breeding Services. They are the leading company in New Zealand when it comes to embryo technology, creating embryos in labs and driving genetic gain through that technology. They've also developed a biopsy technology that allows us to basically take genetic material, DNA from an embryo, and then test that the genetic material and find the sex that embryo, find out what, and do the genomic testing at that stage, so we get an idea of what embryos actually have the highest genetic value, what embryos have certain single genes like poles or any defects, and so that's an area where you can speed up the genetic gain that for our breeding program, for using our breeding program to create better bulls faster. But this technology also allows farmers to actually speed up when they identify their superior cows, to also get more progeny from those superior cows and speed up their genetic gain that way. And this is an area that using embryos to drive genetic gain is in New Zealand. It's relatively new. It's generally the breeders of bulls that are actively participating, but we see in countries like Brazil, in North America, and also in parts of Europe, where this is actually an area that's becoming more common practice, and where embryos rather than semen become the product that's being sold. So that's again, it's another area where we can speed up the genetic gain. And then this slide here, or this graph here, this shows the technology, and this is effectively an embryo, and this is the process of extracting that little bit of DNA that's required to do the genetic testing, and you can imagine that this is multiple times enlarged to make it all visible for the naked eye, but it's effectively where it gets sucked in and out of the embryo, and that's the exciting part. That's another area where R&D and innovation can help with the genetics.
Yeah, just on that point, I mean, what you've seen there is basically a laser cut into an embryo, and then removing a piece of DNA and then actually recutting it, and the embryo remains viable and can be bred from, and then we can actually identify the information we need by DNA testing to identify what the genetic makeup of that embryo is going to be, and decisions can be made about whether it's carried through into the breeding program or discarded at that point, rather than waiting for the animal to be born. So if we're talking about getting things done faster, we're certainly, that's taking it from, I guess, minus 270 days versus we'll be waiting for what the animal's born would be sort of 270 days later, if that, and then potentially we'll be able to prove it a lot longer still. So huge opportunity. I mean, just one thing to note is that ABS, the company that's doing that, is actually majority owned by CRV. So what CRV has done is invested in a lot of innovative companies in New Zealand to help us deliver better products to the market. Just during the call, I just noticed a few questions come through. Sarah, did you want me to walk through top to bottom, just quickly answering those?
Yeah, that would be great if you don't mind. Thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. So yeah, so if you don't want to go through the questions.
Yep. Okay, well, Peter and I'll do a tic-tac on it. So if we perhaps start in the order they came through. The pros and cons of duration versus how old a cow can get before it's culled. I think that's, again, just demonstrates to me the need, why we need good data collection, so we can actually understand at what time you trade off genetic gain with longevity. So it is around understanding how those genetics perform in the particular environment. And not all farms are the same. Not all areas of New Zealand are the same. So some genetics will express themselves slightly differently. So it is always a trade-off, but the importance of on-farm data, I think, is fundamental to making those decisions. So to the point I made before, if we have that good data, we can identify what animals we want to breed from that will breed those positive traits in versus ones that we may want to just use for milk production. Anything you'd add, Peter, to that?
Yeah, I think to expand on that, how long can an animal, a cow, last? At the moment in New Zealand, the average age of cows when they're culled is about 4.5 lactations in. So cows are generally on average culled when they start the lactation at 2 years of age. So you're looking at 6.5 years of age when they are culled. In North America, that's a lot lower. That's where animals on average do between 1 and 2 lactations. So in a worldwide perspective, our cows last quite long, but there are cows in New Zealand that are do 8, 9, 10 lactations. There's a lot of research been done on this, and I guess from an efficiency point of view, the cows peak. They peak at about lactation 4, 5, and then after that they they start slowly going back, and old age start creeping in, and their health deteriorates somehow. And that's where you balance the new animals at a higher genetic gain that come in that can help and improve. So there is a balance, an optimum. But certainly, if we can extend the average age of the cows in New Zealand by 1 lactation, that would make a lot of difference to the profitability, but also to the amount of replacements that farmers have to keep. And that if they have less replacements, less cows, more feed goes into production rather than maintenance, and that, from an environmental perspective, is extremely beneficial.
Okay. Thanks. The next one was just around the uptake of commercial DNA testing. It's certainly a growth area for us, and will continue to be so. I think that as farmers understand the value of that genetic information, that service will continue to grow, and that's a New Zealand-wide trend, and it's something that's globally a trend, like sex semen and dairy beef are as well. The other question was around breeding for methane reduction. We have, as I said, we've invested with other players in the industry around analysing or running all of our bulls through the methane sampling system. The expectation is that from that we'll identify genetics that potentially have a lower output of methane, and the expectation is the industry will be able to develop a breeding value for methane. So we'd expect to see that come through and be one of those traits that we would breed for. So that's ongoing work. It will take a number of years to do that, but there's a commitment from both LIC and ourselves to test our bulls through that and to work with the industry to identify those genetics and embed them into our breeding programs where appropriate. So yeah, the index is a wee way away yet, I guess, is the short answer to that. Sarah, your question around use of antimicrobials. Yeah, definitely, it's all part of that clean, green, healthy and efficiency driver for us, is to actually make sure that we do concentrate on that. Peter, you might be able to talk about some of the health and efficiency, udder health, hoof health pieces on there, maybe.
Yeah, it's the health aspect is a term that we also use is the resistance to culling. You want animals that are as robust and as strong as anything, and if they are healthy, they are also more robust. So that health aspect is important, and that's where mastitis is one aspect. Other health, if animals can fight off bacteria themselves more successfully, they last longer and they need less antibiotics. Hoof health is the same. Is an area around lameness. Lameness is one of the other big ones that farmers tell us is an issue. It is that they are other health and hoof health are two key ones in that area that we are focusing on. And we already, our colleagues overseas already have good information on that, and we know the data that we need to collect. It's about getting the data in an efficient manner. Once we have that, we will be able to offer solutions to farmers there.
Next question is around the crossover between low end size and low methane size. I'm probably not, I don't know if Peter is, but probably not qualified at a scientific level to answer too much but into that. But effectively, fundamentally, we've got the low end initiative is around the concentration of nitrogen in the urine. So dealing with urine and that running off into the environment through the soil profile into waterways and affecting nitrification of waterways. Whereas the methane work is more around actually the greenhouse gas impact of methane production from the dairy industry. So two different, quite distinctive, different pieces of work. I'm sure there possibly is some crossover, but Peter, you might have a bit more of a comment around that from the science side. But yeah, two distinct pieces of research work at this stage.
Yeah, I think they deal with two distinct different problems that we have around our environment. However, the crossover is in the fact that it's about what animals do with the feed that they take in, and that's where, when it comes to methane, methane is a byproduct of that conversion of grass into solids. And in a way is also a byproduct, and we're looking in both cases to look at the animals that are utilizing what they eat more efficiently, and if we can find animals that eat the same amounts or less, but use it for either production or beef or meat production or milk production, solids production, that's the animals we want, and the animals that excrete more, we don't want them. So that's where their crossover is. So there is the potential for, there's potential correlations, that an animal that's better for methane is also better for low end, but that's not a given.
Yeah, Don, your question was around oversight harvesting. If we look, I think Peter alluded to it in when he was speaking, but if in overseas markets we do see oversight harvesting going on at the moment. We do see it at the breeder end, but in other countries it is more widespread practice. And look, it possibly could become more of a piece here, but some of it again comes back to making sure we have good systems to identify those elite genetics to harvest those oversights from. So it is certainly something we will watch with interest, and I think internationally the use of embryo implantation and embryo breeding is gaining more traction. I guess when we look at it from a New Zealand perspective, with a seasonal calving pattern, potentially some of the logistics may create a slightly more of a challenge, maybe. But if the demand is there, I'm sure the industry will find a way through it. I think there's possibly some lower hanging fruit for us in working with some of the commercial DNA testing programs to actually identify those elite females and using a precision mating approach in the short term. But again, it's a space we'll watch very, very closely, particularly with the investment we have in ABS. We're well positioned to grow with that piece, that opportunity in the market. The next question was around genetics and pasture management. I guess that's why, again, it does come back to data, and that's why we're so conscious of getting good quality data into our breeding programs and our sire proving programs to make sure that the genetics that we're breeding from are working well in a pasture-based system, because how they perform is very much a genetics by environment. So we need to make sure we've actually developing genetics that are right for the farming systems we operate, be that pasture-based system 5 or system 1, when there potentially are differences there, and that will come through in the data collected as we look at how those different genetics perform in those different environments. Before I hand back over to Peter just to answer that, I mean, the biopsy technology using cloning, at the moment the biopsy technology is to take DNA samples and to actually analyse those for embryonic selection rather than use of cloning. It's not something that's currently being done.
The technology is simply just you take a little bit of DNA to find out what's there. You don't change any of the DNA, so anything associated with that. So it's a very different technology.
Can I just on that, where you talking about the cloning piece? I think it's one of the big sort of challenges for the industry, and be it both in pasture and in genetics, as to what position does New Zealand industry take on gene editing? Because if we're looking at those sorts of technologies and the rate of genetic gain, they obviously have quite a degree of application. But we need to have a debate wider than this forum, but around what does that opportunity hold versus the risks it may hold for an image that New Zealand's trying to portray in international markets. But that's way outside of my level of understanding and pay scale, but it's something that we probably, as a nation, I think we need to start having those types of discussions. The last one was, do we have a policy on recycling circular economy? Is there lots of waste in so many straws and semen? Interesting, we have investigated a program actually of recycling straws to try and minimise waste on farm. I'm a farmer myself, and I do appreciate that it's it is one of those things that we need to look at, the use of throughout the value chain, whether it's our own production facilities or the services we provide. So it is something that is on our radar, to answer your question, Jackie.
It's because we've done some, one of our employees has done some checking with farmers, but also with industry, and when you look at the AB process, there's the plastic straws, there's the gloves, and there's one other piece that's plastic, and it adds up quite a bit. So we are certainly looking at that, and I think we are looking at other companies that are recycling plastics on farm at the moment, and see if we can work with them to get rid of this problem.
Internationally, they have been looking at using other non-plastic pieces, but actually, when you look at effectively you're using a medical device, so around issues around hygiene is very, very important. So it's something that is, and as Peter said, it's a project that we have one of our team working on last year, and we're due to continue that work. It's not something that's lost on us. I don't know if there's any further questions or any other comments you want to make, Sarah, or I'm happy to answer any question you have, but also just generally, if there are questions that you as a group have pertaining to the dairy industry or genetics or breeding, please don't hesitate to reach out for us. We're more than happy to engage and provide some input if we feel we can to help with the debate.
It sounds like everyone's been able to ask their questions, so thank you so much for today.